Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome the Secretary of State for Europe, the Right Honourable Sir Alan Duncan, MP.
Your Excellencies, journalists of the world, I have to say it's a really great pleasure to speak at an event compared by my good friend and indeed the many voices of Rory Bremner. I'm a big fan of Rory's. He very kindly agreed to perform at my 50th birthday, which, as you can see, has not yet happened. It's also quite the honour to follow Gibraltar's Chief Minister, Fabien Picardo. Our lives have overlapped a little. We both studied at Oxford, and I spent part of my childhood in Gibraltar, where my father was stationed with the RAF when I was a child. So unsurprisingly, we have lots in common. After all, he is a statesman of global stature, and I think the last few days have shown that, at least of him. Even if I'm a little shorter, we both at least share the same glowing suntan. We're also surrounded by rather pesky characters who make our life a general misery. Fabien calls them Barbary macaques. To the uninitiated, that's the furry little apes who are native to Gibraltar. I call them the Conservative European Reform Group. And then, of course, there's Boris. Oh, I'm so sorry you can do it better. I'm so sorry I'm not here. But I spent 2 years working with Boris. I soon discovered, though, that whenever he goes on a charm offensive, it was invariably offensive. Yesterday, though, was a truly momentous day for the future of the whole UK family. After 2 years of intense negotiations, accusations, counter-accusations, a batch of resignations, the big news is that I managed to finish this speech tonight. But don't worry, it's only 585 pages. But since Gina Miller is here, I think at the end of it you can have a meaningful vote. The entire EU debate, I think, was infected by fake news and Twitter trolling. When I was in Russia last year, I was the target of a vicious disinformation campaign. Russia Today referred to me as the UK's towering Foreign Office Minister. So this fully meets the Kremlin's normal standards of accuracy, but it perhaps proves a contrast to my friend William Hague, who has been mocking me for 35 years by saying of me, well, the thing about Alan is he's always the last to know when it's raining and the first to know when it's flooding. But you know, we're not scared of the truth in the Foreign Office. We're not scared. That's why we opened up our doors this year to a TV crew to show that in their documentary, we are no longer a bastion of white male privilege. So I'd like to thank the Foreign Office team behind the documentary, Tarquin Smithers, Timothy Ponsonby-Smythe, and Johnny Come Lately for their excellent work. But it was perhaps a sign of the times that the filmmakers seemed almost as interested in Palmerston, the Foreign Office cat, as they were in the serious subject of diplomacy. But I suppose actually Palmerston does punch above his weight. With 50,000 more Twitter followers than me, he's clearly has more impact on the world than this little minister. But the film covered the work of our diplomats, including a certain foreign ambassador who confirmed, caught on camera, that his job is to be disarming even when his country isn't. So, amidst the frivolity of diplomacy, I genuinely want to say a few words in tribute to my good friend Fabien. He really has shown consummate statesmanship and courage. Courage is a rare quality in politics, by guiding Gibraltar through the tricky negotiations with the EU. Now, without him, the progress which the whole UK family made yesterday could not have happened. And we've emerged stronger and more united than ever before. And as I and other UK ministers have said on many occasions before, the UK's commitment to Gibraltar's British sovereignty is absolute. And I'm very sorry that some of my own Conservative Party colleagues have asserted that our sovereignty commitment has been undermined by the UK's Brexit deal. And as you've heard from the Chief Minister himself, this is totally untrue. And when it comes to the deal itself, I very much hope that all members of Parliament, from whatever party, will now act in the national interest and vote in favour of this withdrawal deal and make sure that it passes through Parliament. Because leaving the EU means having the same friends, but with different structures. We're part of the same world, and we intend to play our full role in it. And that world in which we live is becoming ever more dangerous, with seemingly intractable conflict in Syria, strife and famine in Yemen, nuclear proliferation in North Korea, and the destabilizing actions of Iran. And as is clear from the developments in the Sea of Azov in just the last 24 hours, we continue to face the very real challenge of Russian actions that destabilize the international legal order. Now, we have today condemned Russia's use of aggression against Ukrainian vessels, and we've called for the release of the 23 Ukrainian sailors held by the Russian authorities. Now, all parties need to act with restraint. But the UK position on that issue is clear. Russia cannot be allowed further to erode Ukraine's territorial integrity, and it must allow the freedom of passage through the Kerch Straits. And all of this just seems so far away from the one imagined by Francis Fukuyama in The End of History. It's not the world he saw. And if we're to protect and preserve the model of liberal democracy that he believed to be so permanent and universal, and if we're to stand against the erosion of the rules-based international system, then we're more than ever before going to need the bravery and the integrity of journalists like so many of you here tonight and so many of the friends you have across the world. In an age of polarized politics and growing nationalism, and in a new world of uncertainty inhabited by bots and trolls and software that can alter faces and voices, not as well as Rory, but it changes the voices. A free press is absolutely vital. So we need the media to be free to operate without fear of intimidation, harassment, or violence. It's got to be free to sift fact from falsehood. It's got to be free to hold governments and businesses properly to account, and free, in short, to defend the truth. Now, in the words of George Orwell, he said, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. Or perhaps, as Oscar Wilde put it rather more indelicately, I might not agree with you, but I'll defend to the death your right to make a complete ass of yourself. But that's why the British government is and wants to be such a champion of press freedom, and why we will be hosting a major international conference next year to mobilize a consensus to protect journalists like you. So I commend you for your courage and your tenacity. I congratulate the worthy winners of tonight's awards, and I also warmly thank the sponsors tonight, including the Sultanate of Oman. And finally, if anyone wants an interview on a towering performance by a Foreign Office minister who is not quite as popular as the office cat, then I'd be happy to offer you an exclusive.